Good afternoon. On behalf of your faculty mentors, the deans and staff of GS, I want to welcome you to the Class Day ceremony celebrating the accomplishments of the 2012 graduates of Columbia's Postbaccalaureate Premedical Pre-Health program. The Columbia Postbac program is the oldest and most distinguished in the country. And it is designed to push, pummel, and drive students to levels of intellectual and scientific discovery that they never thought was possible. Postbacs embody a passionate commitment to healing, which they demonstrate through incredibly hard work in their academic program and in their many hours of hands-on volunteer work. I'm sure each postbac resonates with the experience of an 11th century Muslim physician and philosopher, Avicenna, who describes how he used to go home every night, set out a lamp, and start reading and writing. And whenever sleep seized me, he writes, I would see the very problems I was working on in my dreams. But he adds, I continued studying until all of the sciences were deeply rooted within me, and I understood them as well as is humanly possible. An even more famous 11th century Muslim physician, known in Europe as Razes, laid out in compelling fashion the moral imperative underlying Avicenna's and your drive to immerse yourselves in the medical sciences. The supreme end for which we were created, he writes, and towards which we have been led, is not the gratification of physical pleasures, but the acquisition of knowledge and the practice of justice. These are two occupations, the quest for knowledge and the practice of justice, that are our sole deliverance out of the present world into the world wherein is neither death nor pain. I can think of no individuals who better embody these ideals of knowledge and justice than those of you sitting before us today. You are scientists, but also humanists and social scientists, all dedicated to the pursuit of truth and the alleviation of suffering. And like Razes over 1,000 years ago, you will face scientific and ethical challenges that would overwhelm most of us. I'm convinced, however, that you enter upon your careers as healthcare professionals fully equipped to engage and grapple with these challenges. I want you to know how proud we are of your accomplishments and how proud we are to count you members of the Columbia family. Let me leave you with Avicenna's most important piece of practical advice, which you should keep with you throughout your professional lives. Make sure, he said, to keep the leeches for at least 24 hours before you apply them. Now, I would like to introduce to you your fearless leader, Dean Victoria Rosner. Dean Rosner will introduce today's keynote speaker.
Thank you, Dean On. Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to see you here all today. I'll be back to talk to you again later. It's my pleasure to introduce to you now our keynote speaker, Dr. Robert Klitzman, Some of you may already know Dr. Klitzman as the director of the MS in Bioethics program, in which a number of our postbac students take part. He is also a professor of clinical psychiatry at the Columbia College of Physicians and Surgeons and at the Joseph Mailman School of Public Health, as well as the director of the Ethics and Policy Core of the HIV Center. We are very lucky to have Dr. Klitzman here to speak with us today, in part because he embodies a core ideal of the Postbac Pre-Med program, that students with a range of backgrounds and skills bring a valuable diversity to the community of healthcare professionals. Dr. Klitzman, in addition to being a psychiatrist, is also a noted writer, an ethicist, a memoirist, and a journalist with 6 books and many, many articles to his name. About his most recent book, which just came out, and it's wonderful, called Am I My Genes? Confronting Fate and Family Secrets in the Age of Genetic Testing, scholar Catherine Stimpson has written, "It is a gift to early 21st century genetics." The book shows how 64 different individuals grapple with the unwanted legacy of genetically linked diseases such as breast cancer or Huntington's. Other books of Dr. Klitzman's deal with topics ranging from HIV and AIDS to mad cow disease to what happens when doctors become patients. I first encountered Dr. Klitzman's work when I read his 1996 book, In a House of Dreams and Glass, Becoming a Psychiatrist. In that work, he wrote with complexity and sensitivity about the challenges involved in 21st century psychiatry, a practice that he depicts as both continuous with the fabled 19th century madhouse and radically transformed from its origins. Like many of our postbac students, Dr. Klitzman's road to becoming a psychiatrist was filled with questions, and he lets us in on his process of self-discovery in the most intriguing of ways, including this little snippet of dialogue that he had with his mother along the way. She said to him, "Won't it get to be too much after a while, talking to crazy people all day?" And he replied, "I think it would be interesting." In addition to his success as a writer, a physician, and administrator, as if that wasn't enough, Dr. Klitzman is a decorated scholar who has received awards including fellowships to important writers' colonies like McDowell, Yaddo, and Bellagio. He has been nominated for both the Pulitzer Prize and the Lambda Literary Award. In 2006, he was appointed by the governor of New York to serve on the ethics board of the New York State Stem Cell Commission. He has held visiting professorships at the University of Virginia and the University of Pennsylvania, and he attended Princeton as an undergraduate, followed by Yale University School of Medicine. It is my privilege to introduce to you Dr. Robert Klitzman.
Thank you so much. It was great. Well, thank you, Dean Rosner, for that wonderful, very generous introduction and for inviting me to speak here today. And Dean Ahn and distinguished faculty and guests, I'm honored to be here with you. And to all of you who are graduating today, congratulations. You are entering into wonderful professions at an important time historically, filled with unheralded opportunities and expansion. But with those great opportunities come certain challenges. And I would like to speak with you today briefly about both those advances, but also those questions that I think you are uniquely poised because of your backgrounds to address. As you know, over the past 100 years, the growth of knowledge in the health sciences has been unprecedented. During that time, X-rays and electroencephalograms, electrocardiograms, ultrasound, magnetic resonance imaging of the brain and the body were all developed. The human genome, the instructions for making a human being, was discovered and largely decoded. We have developed effective treatments for a wide variety of common ailments, antibiotics, drugs that reduce cholesterol and high blood pressure, diabetes and depression. Tylenol for headaches. We've developed vaccines for TB, yellow fever, polio, mumps, hepatitis, influenza, and other diseases. We regularly transplant kidneys, livers, lungs, hearts, and even skin. Certain diseases, such as smallpox, have been entirely eradicated from the earth. We have literally saved and improved billions of lives. The future holds further promises involving personalized medicine and choosing drugs and doses based on each individual's particular genetics, as well as stem cell therapies and additional new medications and ways of preventing countless diseases. You will see extraordinary things in your lifetimes. Inventions in other fields, from the internet to cell phones, are also revolutionizing how health professionals practice and communicate with each other and with their patients. These achievements are also improving dentistry, veterinary medicine, and countless other areas. Yet, particularly in medicine, challenges also loom. We live, of course, in an ever-shifting world of profound environmental, economic, and political change. Our technological breakthroughs have great costs as well. Increasingly, we as a society simply cannot afford to provide all the treatment that all people want. At the moment, some 40 million Americans, including millions of children, lack any health insurance whatsoever. Thus far, the fate of President Obama's plan for addressing these gaps remains unclear. Technologically, we can keep millions of people alive who are permanently in coma and will never awake. Many people would like to maintain these lives, in part to avoid wrenching decisions of when to withdraw artificial life support, literally when to pull the plug. Several years ago, the President sought to encourage physicians to discuss end-of-life care planning and advance directives with their patients. Sarah Palin, as you may recall, denounced this effort, saying they're creating death panels to get rid of Granny. The President took the suggestion off the table, which I think is unfortunate. Such conversations are in the best interests of patients, family members, and our society as a whole. These issues clearly raise difficult ethical dilemmas, and as you go forth into your chosen fields, you will have to wrestle with these and other conundra daily. You will face quandaries which science alone will not give you answers for. Here is where, however, you are uniquely situated and can in fact help. In college, many, if not most of you, majored in disciplines outside of science, in the humanities and social sciences, and I would like to encourage you to continue to draw on these critical other fields. Increasingly, medicine needs input and insights beyond those of science alone. Science can solve many problems, but not all of the dilemmas we now face. Several years ago, I became a patient myself and was stunned to see how much I did not know. As a result, I ended up interviewing 75 other physicians who had also become ill and wrote a book, as mentioned, called When Doctors Become Patients, exploring these experiences. And what I found constantly surprised me. I always thought I was miscompassionate, one young woman with breast cancer told me, that I understood what my patients were going through. Then she said, I became a patient myself. I had no idea what my patients were going through, she said. My eyes were completely opened. These doctors suddenly realized all that they had not learned in pre-med courses and in medical school. It took becoming a patient for them to see. Many of these doctors used to dismiss, for instance, non-specific symptoms, such as fatigue or nausea or even pain. Instead, they focused on the numbers, lab tests that measured liver functions or other chemicals in the blood. But now they realized how important these other symptoms were. One gastroenterologist told me that she had treated literally hundreds of cases of abdominal pain. Then she herself developed it. In retrospect, her spleen was expanding. I had no idea, she said, that when patients said that they had pain, that this is what they meant. It was so much worse than anything I ever could have imagined. Listening to the language your patients use to sense the meanings behind the words and the limitations of those words is key. If you listen to your patients, an elderly doctor once told me, they will tell you what is wrong. They will diagnose themselves. He's generally been right. But many competing pressures will get in your way. The average doctor-patient visit is now less than 11 minutes. Listening for nuance and inflection is ever more important. In an age of high-tech machines, the best instruments that you have will be your ears and your eyes. As doctors, we also need to pay more attention to our own language. One elderly surgeon told me, the night before I had to undergo surgery, he said, my surgeon came and said to me, there's a 5% chance you may die tomorrow in the operating room. That night, he told me, I couldn't sleep. Only later, did he realize that his doctor could have instead said, quote, there's a 95% chance that everything should go okay. And the surgeon said to me, do you know, I've been a surgeon for almost 50 years, and I never realized that those two bits of information that are statistically the same have such completely different meanings to patients. I had no idea. He had never thought about it. Now he does. Yet you here today have been trained to think about not only science, but about the humanities and the social sciences, about language and meaning and the broader social contexts that shape our lives and can limit what we see. And I think you can be more sensitive to these issues and train your colleagues and eventually your students to be as aware of these issues as possible. Many, many other examples exist of how language and meaning are vital in healthcare and will be in what you do. Recently, I also interviewed patients who had or were at risk of various genetic mutations. Doctors tend to see genetic markers associated with diseases either present or absent, either positive or negative is the test, like a pregnancy test. You either have a mutation for breast cancer or you don't. But what I found, as I described in the book, Am I My Genes, that Dean Rosner mentioned, the patients I spoke with saw these tests in much more difficult and complex ways. I always knew I shouldn't have stayed in that terrible relationship, one woman said to me. Why is that, I asked. Because that's why I have breast cancer. But you have the breast cancer mutation, I said. Oh, yes, but what triggered it was the stress of that horrible relationship. And I always told myself I shouldn't have stayed in it as long as I did. Another woman said to me, I always knew I shouldn't have stayed in that awful job for all those years and lived on Long Island. That's why I have cancer. But you have the mutation, I said. Yes, she said, but the stress of that job and all the high-tension wires on Long Island, that's all what triggered it. Similarly, an African-American woman in the South Bronx I interviewed said, you know, it's all the crap that they dump up in the landfills in the Bronx. They would never dump in Manhattan where the rich people live. That's why I have cancer. Now, all these explanations may in fact be correct. Breast cancer, even with a mutation, may result from complex interactions of genes, environment, and behavioral factors. But my point is that patients come up with stories about their illness to try to make sense of it and to find order. They construct narratives that make sense to them, and these can in fact determine whether they decide to seek treatment, whether they decide to get testing, whether they tell family members who might also have these genes about these genes. So doctors and patients look at medical information very differently, and we need to understand our patients' stories and how they view the problems they confront. Yet medical school pays far less attention to these areas than it should. You, who have had the privilege to study the world from other perspectives, can and should listen for these tales. Doing so will make you better doctors. You have something else, too, that you can offer the fields you now enter. Laboratory studies have greatly enhanced healthcare, but medicine continues to need good research, analysis, and debate about what we can and what we should do and how. You have been trained here at a great university that values inquiry at its deepest levels, and I encourage you to enter your new fields with open minds and to help shape these realms. It will be easy and tempting simply to see your work as a job where you punch a time clock. But you can also work to improve the practices and systems that surround you. You can write for professional journals or elsewhere about the ethical, social, psychological, political, and of course scientific questions you face. Great discoveries have been made by physicians who think critically and do not accept everything at face value, who observe and think about what they see. In the 19th century, for instance, lithium was first used to treat gout. it was not effective. But some doctors noticed that it calmed patients' mood. It was eventually found to be extremely effective for manic depression. More recently, sildenafil, better known as Viagra, was developed to treat heart disease. It did not work. But patients began to tell their doctors about its other effects. A few doctors listened, and the rest is history. My point here is that you too will see patients struggling with various medical symptoms and side effects that have not been described. You will also see homelessness, hunger, and effects of bad social policies, and you should bear witness to what you see. Research it, write about it, and help improve the field. If you see something, say something. You can contribute, often uniquely so, and should. In these ways, you can help not only your patients, but your colleagues, your profession, future patients, their families, and society as a whole. Yes, we live in an ever-changing world, but you each here especially can and should work to make it better in these ways, drawing it on all you have been privileged to learn. Enjoy the wonderful futures before you, and they are wonderful. You're entering exciting professions at exciting times, but you should also contribute to them, drawing on all you have learned thus far. Good luck and Godspeed. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Andrew Sunshine, Director of the Postbac program. The time has come to recognize the postbacs who have just completed the preposterously difficult, allegedly impossible pre-medical course requirements, an important milestone on the path to their careers as healers. I will presently summon each candidate to this podium to be congratulated by the deans, our keynote speaker, faculty, and also to receive their alumni pins from Janet Griffin, Associate Director for Alumni Relations. But first, I wish to pause to acknowledge the faculty whose instruction has brought our candidates to this stage, to this very stage. Let's show them our appreciation for their dedication to learning and to our students. Before we return to our candidates, I have a request to make of the Assembly. Please, please hold your applause and your cheers until the last postbac has been called to stand forth. We want every name to sound clearly as the candidates cross the podium. It is now my privilege to summon each of the candidates to the podium by name. Okay. Great. Here we go. Rachel Talley. Melissa Ribble. Laura Reckadal. Kara Siegel. Robert Berkey. Simon Barbet. Carly Lang. Alexander Myers. Rio Beardsley. Jillian Dugood. Eli Wolkoff. Christina H. Chung. Boguslava Dimitrova Powell. Randy Lee. Jonathan Penner. Brian Cohen. Nehali Nanawati. Elizabeth Daphne Verter. Sarah Lowry. Phoebe Priolo. Carolina Thompson. Matthew Wheeler. Gabriela Aguilera. Priscilla da Silva. Catherine Choi. Adam Schweber. Nicholas David. Frina Chohan. Paul McCormick. Daniel Boren-Brenner. Claire Machulat. Meredith Menz. Felix Zaslovsky. Emily Spiroli. Alicia Paredes. Florence Couvret. Benjamin Krippendorf. Yumeko Kawano. Tiffany Y.G. Patrina Sexton. Darcy Allwood. Joshua Phelps. Eric Sturgill. Claire Tobias. Claire Audrey Bayan. Eitan Rasek. Laura Shiree. Claire Louie. Nicole Alamanti. Kira Dumlele. Constance Musouris. Melinda Espiritu. Diana Shu. Nicole Inman. Stuart Davidson. Daniel Stifler, Mona Griffin, Dawn Quigley, Jessica Montes, Marit Perlman Shapiro, Asif Javed, Andrea Glessner, Natasha Birnbaum, Shannon Philander, Molly Grassini, Chelsea Schmidt, Milna Rufin, Alyssa Shockett, Liza Horbar, Jessica Epstein, Nicholas White, Ryan Grattan, Yesol Lee, Junji Yeo, Sylvia Kim, Oliver O'Connell, Christopher Hernandez, John Andrews, Christopher Seaton, Gabe Tissian, Amal Masri, Lailai Kwok, Ai-Jun Wang, Adam Shine, James Swanson Jr., I guess so. Well, let's hear it for the graduates. Now, before I close, I ask that the candidates stand up again and turn and face your families and friends and pay tribute to them for accompanying you on your journey and keeping steadfast faith in you. Please clap. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you my friend and colleague, Limari Carrasquillo.
Good afternoon. I have the honor of introducing our 2012 Class Day student speaker. Jillian Duguid is a 2010 graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, where she earned a Bachelor's of Arts degree, magna cum laude, in International Studies with a minor in French, and also earned a Bachelor of Science degree, magna cum laude, in Economics with a concentration in Healthcare Management and Policy from the Wharton School. It was a fateful trip to Senegal during her sophomore year of college that would set Jillian on the path to medical school. Soon after completing her undergraduate studies, Jillian joined our program in summer 2010. As a postbac student, Jillian has earned praise from her faculty here at Columbia for demonstrating excellence in her academic coursework. In addition to volunteering her time and effort in clinical and research settings, Jillian has exhibited a strong service ethic by participating in our student organization, the PMA, as one of their members at large. Jillian exemplifies what each of you bring to this program: perseverance, integrity, and the commitment to serve the greater community. Please help me welcome Ms. Jillian Duguid.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, family and friends. It's so exciting to see you all here. To my fellow postbacs, congratulations. We made it through these 2 years. As Dean Carrasquillo said, my name is Jillian Duguid, and I came to the postbac program right after undergrad at the University of Pennsylvania, along with Stuart and Nife. I graduated Penn with 2 degrees, a BS in economics and a BA in international studies, a minor in French, and a concentration in healthcare management. Some might call me indecisive, but I like to think that I just really like school. How did I end up here, you might ask? My pursuit of medicine began while I was studying abroad in Senegal, in West Africa, during my sophomore year of college. Often when people ask me why medicine, I tell them a story of me crumpled on a bathroom floor, rolling around due to an intestinal bug I got by eating street meat. I say maybe it took me getting sick to realize that I was actually passionate about learning why people get sick. Sometimes I tell a story of me standing on the edge of a cliff in Mali, looking outward at the vastness of the expanse before me. I say for the first time, I recognize my place in the universe and my opportunity to make a difference. In reality, my decision to pursue medicine was neither as lofty as an epiphany on a mountaintop, nor as lowly as me crumpled next to a toilet. It was rather a confluence of many subtle factors. Any one factor would not have been a strong enough impulse to stimulate me to pursue medicine, but their sum total is what matters. My parents' love for science and for humanity, my experiences working in hospitals, in research, and in the healthcare industry. These potentials kept building and building. Finally, the gentle prodding of my now fiancé pushed me over the threshold, and from there, the floodgates opened. As Professor Firestein taught us, an action potential was fired in me. The action potential has been propagated ever since, jumping from kinematics to chemical bonds, to evolution and aromatic rings. And now, right now, it is synapsing here. We have learned so much in the past 2 years, so much. We, as novice scientists, are like hitchhikers searching for the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. I remember in our first biology class, Professor Chasen told us that physics explained all of the really big things in the world, chemistry, all of the really small things in the world, and biology, all of the things in the middle. So much science has been stuffed into my brain that there was a point 2 weeks ago when I just had to say stop. My brain is full. I cannot hold any more information inside. Coming to Columbia has meant learning from people at the tops of their fields. Professor Bruce, who is on the short list for the Nobel Prize every year, taught me Gen Chem 1. We had a cabal of young, impressive faculty teaching us chemistry. From this group, I would like to highlight Professor Snyder. How many Orgo professors get a standing ovation at the end of class? Then again, how many Orgo professors play Who Wants to Be an Orgo Millionaire, complete with sound effects and lifelines? We have learned from Professors Doubleday and Budick, who have actually been teaching at Columbia forever. Thanks to Professor Budick, I will never forget Newton's third law of motion. This man, possibly in his 70s, sat down in a rolling chair with a fire extinguisher in hand. He pressed down on the nozzle of the fire extinguisher and literally propelled himself backwards across the classroom. For every action, there is an equal but opposite reaction. Thank goodness he was wearing a helmet. Finally, I could not talk about the academics here without mentioning Dean Valentini and Dr. Moshowitz. Dean Valentini was never my professor, and yet I found myself in his office hours, week after week, trying to understand why acids are acids, trying to figure out what the heck entropy is. Dr. Moshowitz is an institution in herself. I have met Columbia professors who still shudder at the thought of her class. When I think of Dr. Moshowitz, I will think of bagels as cell junctions. I will think diuretic means to pee. Mostly, I will remember the panic attack she nearly gave me during our final first semester. You see, my father is the head of hematology at Columbia Presbyterian, and his specialty is clotting disorders. When I saw the words hemophilia and clotting factor written on the top of the exam, I thought, oh my God, I must do well on this test. I cannot shame the family. Speaking of family, I would just like to acknowledge all of the family and friends here today. We could not have gotten here without your support and encouragement. If the path through this program was an action potential, you, friends and family, were its myelin sheath, protecting us, making sure we finished with the same energy and vigor with which we began. To the parents, thank you also for producing such interesting, intellectually curious, and compassionate children. For me, this program was so much more than what I learned in the classroom, and I think that this is because we have such amazing people here. Really amazing, objectively so. Just check the New York Times article on Postbac, Molly Grassini, if you don't believe me. Sorry. Let me now give you a few examples of these people. I remember the day last year when I was at home watching the Food Network, when suddenly I realized that man on TV is my physics lab partner. Dave, wherever you are, thank you so much for your Moroccan chickpea stew. It got me through one especially hellish round of midterms. Also, he is very good at explaining things step by step, and I think his future patients will appreciate this. Also through this program, I met Nikki, my co-member at large on the PMA. I love working with you. Your mind is always working. Only you could figure out how to tape down those crazy tablecloths on a windy day. At the same time, I am so inspired by your quiet sense of duty. For those who don't know, Nikki organized a postbac school supply drive last summer. Why? Because we as postbacs have a lot of extra notebooks, and surely someone else could use them. Or take Daphne. Daphne teaches cooking classes to psychiatry patients. She runs the Community Psychiatry Project. She hosts parties for every occasion. And she does it all with the biggest smile on her face, never asking for anything in return. When I was accepted to medical school this year, she sent me a box of 12 cupcakes, each one personalized. Meeting Daphne at orientation actually totally changed my outlook on this program. My initial plan was to keep my head down, focus on work, and just push through these 2 years until I made it to medical school. But her positive energy, her generosity of spirit, encouraged me to open up and embrace the people around me. I never expected to find a community here, but I did. We learned together, we struggled together, and then usually we drank a beer together. People often talk about the competition here, but what should be recognized more is the level of collaboration. Enter the library at any time, and there are groups of postbacs just working on problems together. I know that I can go up to any one of you and ask you for help, and you'll be patient with me as it takes me 10 minutes to figure out one simple question. As Albert Einstein once stated, most people say that it is the intellect which makes a great scientist, but they are wrong. It is character. My postbac memories will be of the people. Karaoke with the PMA, brunches with my girls, watching a giant pink monkey sing happy birthday to Nat, going to soccer bars, long, very long conversations with Adam Schweber, seeing the pride in Dennis's face as she showed me photos of his newborn nephew. I cannot emphasize the power of community enough. When I was in Senegal, I learned a phrase, Neet Nitai Garabam. The people are other people's medicine. We got through this program because we did it together. And as we all continue to become healers, let us keep in mind that we too can be healed through the bonds that we form and the laughter that we share. Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian, for that wonderful speech. I'd like to close, I won't keep you too long, but I'd like to close our ceremony today with a few final words of praise and encouragement for all of our students who have completed the Columbia University Postbaccalaureate Premedical program, as well as devout thanks, seconding our other speakers, to the families who are here and who have supported our students to this day. I want to honor the extraordinary sense of dedication and purpose that has brought you to this moment. You have toiled, sacrificed, and probably even sweated in response to a moment's inspiration, a moment that revealed to you a vocation for healthcare. You did not allow that moment of insight to remain an idle fancy or a plan for someday later on. Today, we celebrate the fact that you have reached an important milestone in your journey toward careers in healthcare. I think and I'm afraid, Molly, I'm going to have to embarrass you one more time. I think our own Molly Grassini did a superb job of describing her experience of that journey to a New York Times reporter in an article published last month. So here's how the reporter tells the story. The transition to the postbac program has not been easy. Adapting to a rigorous and unrelenting course load of physics, math, and science was at first a stretch compared to writing the papers and scripts that had dominated her time as an undergraduate. Quote, "It was not how my brain was wired," Molly says. Still, the reporter continues, she had a love of science and figured out how to process and memorize a lot of information quickly. After isolating herself in the first year to focus on studies, she has since loosened up. She has even found art in chemistry class, where she has employed her drawing skills. As Molly says, some of the compounds are really beautiful. I imagine that at 2 o'clock in the morning, when you were studying chemistry, beautiful may not have been the first word that sprang to your mind to characterize compounds. But now, with your final exams only hours past for some of you, there may be time to begin to recollect in tranquility and see some beauty in it all. I know that this is not the end of the educational road for you, but a new beginning. What I wish for all of you is that the pride and sense of accomplishment you feel today will buoy you up through the challenges that still lie ahead. Many of you came into this program thinking, can I really do this? Can I have a career in medicine? Today you can tell yourself, I can, I will. Never let that faith in yourself waver. Our faith in you certainly never will. This may be graduation, but we will always be here for you, for advice, for assistance, and for fellowship. We will be calling on you to mentor the generations that will follow in your footsteps. Please stay in touch with us and allow us to continue to cheer you on and support you in your ascent to great achievement. Congratulations once more to all of you. And now, as the band seems to be striking up a few notes and the champagne corks are popping in the back of the room, I suggest we all adjourn for the rest of our celebration to continue. Thank you so much.